This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss the latest news in the wide world of sports. My name is Ben Brown. Anthony is not in the studio today, actually not feeling too well, so he will not be in here today. And as always on Fridays, Alex is not in the studio for other reasons. So I will be riding solo today, so you will have to deal with me and me only on this Friday here on Veterans Day. So before I start the show, I want to give a big shout out to all the veterans out there in the United States. If you're listening, I appreciate your service and everything. If you're listening in like the UK or a different country, it's called Remembrance Day or some other stuff. So just a big shout out to all the veterans in general for everything they do for all our countries and provide, secure things for our country and freedoms and all that stuff. So I want to say thank you to all you guys listening and enjoy your day along with your weekend coming up. So with that being said, I want to lead us into the show talking some NFL, National Football League. We had Thursday Night Football last night, as well as we will preview this weekend's slate of games here on the schedule. Going to be talking a little bit about college football. In my eyes, there's really not too much on the schedule this week. The big game is Washington against USC. Some really big college football playoff implications for the Huskies. This is one of their last few hurdles they need to climb over in the Pac-12 before they get to that college football playoff near the end there. If they stay undefeated, I really think they're in. So we'll have to see how they match up against the Trojans, who are playing absolutely great since they switched to Sam Darnold at cornerback. Just one loss since that time to Utah. And then we'll end the show with just some quick hits with some sports stuff. We had a lot of great stuff to talk about today. We had our Major League Baseball Silver Sluggers announced for the National League and the American League just last night. So we'll talk about who they are, some familiar names for some other things, like for the Gold Gloves. We have some people that are overlapping here. We'll be talking about UFC 205, a historic night going down tomorrow at Madison Square Garden in New York, the first mixed martial arts UFC event in the state of New York. 3 title fights, 2 on the men's side, 1 on the women's side. The big one is Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez. Talk about UFC just really, really, really quickly at the end of the show, as well as Dwayne Wade returning back to Miami for the first time. I know Alex and Anthony talked about it yesterday, but we'll just talk about how he did and what the whole occasion was, what it meant to him, some post-game reaction for the Heat versus the Bulls game from last night in South Beach. All right, so let's just start the show talking some Thursday Night Football. I mean, I feel like really all season long, Thursday Night Football has been pretty bad. Every single game. I know why they do it. I've talked about it on the show. Obviously, it's a moneymaker. You have the NFL, which really dominates Sundays. You have Monday night. You have Thursday Night Football now. So you're really only left with a couple of days, 3 days with games, but a couple of days to not really talk about football in general. So I absolutely know why they do that, and it makes total sense. But every one of these games is just terrible. These teams are not ready. The players are not physically fit enough to play just 4 days, 3 days later. It just doesn't work out. And last night was really just another one of those examples. So the Baltimore Ravens top the Cleveland Browns 28-7. The Browns remain winless on the season. And yet again, I wouldn't say the Browns necessarily blew a lead. Technically they did. They had a 7-6 halftime lead. But the Ravens go on and score 25 unanswered after trailing 7-3 to beat the Browns 28-7, as I mentioned. Joe Flacco threw for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 interceptions, which is not too good, but pretty much 300 yards and 3 scores to lead Baltimore in those categories. We had Brashad Perriman of the Ravens get 64 yards on 3 catches and actually had his first career touchdown after being a rookie last year, missing a lot of time. Actually, both of his years he's been in the league now, but missing a lot of time. He finally gets his first touchdown, so congrats to Perriman. Oh, man, as bad as the Ravens are, and I really think they are a bad team, they currently sit atop the AFC North at 5-4 now. no matter what happens this weekend, they will stay there, even if Pittsburgh does beat Dallas, which I think is definitely a marquee game. We'll talk about that a little later in the segment. But they will still sit atop the AFC North, which is quite astonishing, really. The Ravens started 3-0, then they lost 4 in a row. Now they're on a 2-game winning streak. But I really don't think they're all that great either. But, I mean, the Browns are just really that bad. I think that's what it really stems down to. The big question mark last night for me was why Hugh Jackson decided to pull quarterback Cody Kessler early in the second half. I don't think he was having necessarily a terrible game. It wasn't a fantastic game, but he was 11 of 18 for 91 yards and 1 touchdown at the time. Didn't turn the ball over or anything, and then he brings in Josh McCown off the bench. McCown plays 4 series. He throws 2 interceptions. He has a fumble, another punt. He finishes with 59 yards on 6 of 13 passing with the 2 interceptions. Like I said, he also fumbled the ball. I mean, well, actually fumbled twice, but he lost one of them is what I mean. So I just don't understand this decision at all. You're 0-9. You're playing absolutely terrible against Baltimore, so you're staring 0-10 right at the face. So why do you sit your young quarterback, Kessler, who you might want to try and play to see if you have some sort of a future in for years to come, to put in McCown when you know what you're getting out of McCown? Like I said, I don't think Kessler has been fantastic, but he really hasn't been that bad in my eyes. 1,200 yards, 66 completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He hasn't been playing terrible. You bring in Josh McCown, who now has played 3 games and has thrown for at least 2 interceptions in each of those games. I just didn't think the decision made much sense. But, I mean, realize who we're talking about here. This is the Browns. Every decision they make does not make sense. The real question mark you have to throw in here is that Robert Griffin III is eyeing a return pretty soon. Last night, just kind of in warm-ups and on the side, he was throwing some passes. He's going to get another scan on that shoulder. We'll have to see if he'll be ready in a couple of weeks or not. But he's looking at coming back. So now you're 0-10. Your season is definitely over at 0-10. But you have to sort of look to the future. I think Kessler is probably their best option right now, and he's the guy I would go with, even if Griffin is healthy. Because with Robert Griffin, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a guy who just really can't seem to stay healthy. Josh McCown, you know what you're getting. Kevin Hogan, the rookie out of Stanford, got a little bit of time last night. He didn't attempt to pass, but I mean, we've seen what he did in one game. He's not ready. I really think Kessler is your best option. I think he needs to start the rest of the year. You have 6 more games to really see what this kid is made of, plus what he's already done. So then at the end of the year, you have to decide, because I think they're going to get the first pick, but if not, they're going to be the second pick. The Niners have 1 win, but the Browns will have to win a couple of games to top that. I think the Niners are still a better team than Cleveland Browns, so I'll give the Cleveland Browns the first pick right now. You have to decide what you want to do going forward. Do you want to maybe draft a Deshaun Watson from Clemson or Deshaun Kaiser from Notre Dame? Do you want to try and roll with Cody Kessler? Do you want to look at like a pass rusher like Myles Garrett from Texas A&M? Maybe go for a lineman. Joe Thomas is getting up there in age. Looks like he was rumored to be getting traded at the trade deadline, which did not happen. But the future is not Joe Thomas. His future is not with the Cleveland Browns. So do you maybe want to go offensive lineman? I think you have to decide what you really want to do. And they have 6 games now to see where they can go at quarterback. I think the answer needs to be Kessler, just to see what they can do, see if they have any sort of chance to maybe move forward with him, or if they need to look to the draft yet again, which Kessler was a 3rd-round pick out of USC, see if they have to go again to try and find someone else. But anyways, they're 0-10. As bad as it may seem, I said it a couple times now, I really do think the Browns still find a win somewhere in their schedule. With 6 games left, they have Pittsburgh, New York Giants, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Bills, the Chargers, and then the Steelers on New Year's Day. So maybe if the Steelers have a playoff spot wrapped up, maybe they sit some starters, maybe San Diego at home. The Bills aren't playing too good recently. Maybe there's a win in there. But like I said, I still think they get a win. I think it'll probably be 1 win. I'm not going to give them 2, but I think there is still a chance for Cleveland in there to get a win. I think they will. I don't see them going 0-16. I really don't. And then, as I mentioned, the 5-4 Baltimore Ravens sitting atop the AFC North. They have Dallas coming up next on the road. Then they're home for Cincinnati, home versus Miami, on the road against the Patriots, home versus the Eagles, and then they end their season with back-to-back road games in the division against the Steelers and the Bengals. So they sit at 5-4 right now, but they still have a tough schedule ahead of them. I still think Pittsburgh's the best team in this division, honestly. I think they'll probably win the division as well. If they beat Dallas, they'll be tied at the top of the division with 5-4. Cincinnati's still kind of in the mix at 3-4-1. I really think that it's still Pittsburgh's division. I realize they had a clunker last week, but I don't really think Roethlisberger was ready to play. He wasn't healthy. So I'll have to see how he'll do this week in a tough game against the 7-1 Dallas Cowboys. So let's take us into this weekend slate of games. So the Green Bay Packers are going to be on the road to face the Tennessee Titans, a matchup for both teams that's really, really important. Aaron Rodgers for Green Bay calling it almost a must-win right now. The Minnesota Vikings, with a 3-loss streak going on at 5-3, go on the road to face the Washington Redskins at 4-3-1 off their bye week. The Chicago Bears are going into Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers at Raymond James Stadium. Another good matchup here, the Kansas City Chiefs at 6-2 go on the road to face the Carolina Panthers, who sit at 3-5 but are on a 2-game winning streak, playing a lot better since their bye week. The Atlanta Falcons are on the road to take on the Philadelphia Eagles, who sit at 4-4. A tough matchup for both teams. I'll preview that one a little later. The LA Rams are on the road to take on the New York Football Jets. Really, both teams just question marks at quarterback. Jared Goff, Case Keenum. It's gonna be Case Keenum this week. Jeff Fisher did announce that. Maybe next week you go to Jared Goff, and then you look at the Jets. Just Fitzpatrick absolutely playing terrible. He has a little bit of an injury to deal with. Do you maybe turn to Bryce Petty if he starts playing bad? So a lot of question marks in that game. I think that game's just an ugly game. The Denver Broncos are on the road to take on the New Orleans Saints, who are playing a lot better recently. Saints now at 4-4. Denver, off their loss to Oakland, maybe have to turn it around if they want to stay competing in the competitive AFC West. The Houston Texans, who sit atop the AFC South, they are facing the Jacksonville Jaguars in the division on the road. The Miami Dolphins go on the road to take on the San Diego Chargers. Have to see if a really good running back matchup here. Have to see who comes out on top between Jay Ajayi of Miami and Melvin Gordon of San Diego. Gordon absolutely tearing it up this year. Had over 200 yards from scrimmage last week. In my eyes, the matchup of the weekend is the 7-1 Dallas Cowboys go on the road to Heinz Field to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, as I mentioned, are 4-4. Ben Roethlisberger, a week of practice under him since their loss last week against the Ravens. Have to see how he can overcome what they did last week, which was absolutely terrible, against a Dallas team who are playing just as good of anybody in the NFL right now. 7-1, 7 consecutive wins, the longest win streak in the NFL currently. The San Francisco 49ers at 1-7 go to the University of Phoenix Stadium to take on the Arizona Cardinals at 3-4-1. Gotta like the Cardinals in this game. San Francisco playing absolutely terrible. Their one win on opening night on Monday night. 7 consecutive losses now. Just not much to look forward to with the Niners. The Sunday night matchup is the Seattle Seahawks are facing the New England Patriots. A good matchup there, a rematch of the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And then Monday night is the Cincinnati Bengals are going to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Giants. All right, so let's preview some of these games now. I think the matchup of the weekend is definitely Dallas and Pittsburgh, so I will talk about that game really quickly. I like Pittsburgh in this game. I realize Dallas playing absolutely fantastic, as I mentioned, sitting at 7-1, 7 consecutive wins. Dak Prescott playing fantastic. Tony Romo is actually healthy, but it looks like he's not going to be active. He's not going to be activated. He's not going to be on the roster, which I think that's kind of a distraction in my eyes. It's like, okay, if Romo's healthy, then why aren't you at least activating him? I'm not saying you need to start him because I think they'll stick with Prescott going forward unless he has a couple, maybe 2 or 3 really bad games where he's the reason the Cowboys lose, which I really don't see that happening with their offense, with how good their offensive line is, how they run the ball, their schemes. I really don't think Prescott's going to be forced into making a whole lot of mistakes where he loses the starting job. But my question is if Romo is healthy, then why aren't you at least activating him? Would you rather have Tony Romo as your backup than Mark Sanchez? The answer is yes. So why are you not putting him on your roster? I think they're doing that to try and avoid the distraction of, okay, Romo's healthy, why aren't you starting him then? Because Jerry Jones had mentioned when Romo's healthy, he's going to be the guy. But then they sort of backed off of that. Prescott's playing fantastic, so how can you really replace him? So you have sort of both sides of that spectrum anyway. But if he's not active, then you don't have to deal with that. So to me, that's a distraction, though. So if he's healthy, why don't you at least activating him? That's kind of throwing a wrench in my eyes. I don't think that really plays a part in this game. I do like Pittsburgh at home. I think that they played so bad last week. Their offense was totally out of whack in their 21-14 loss. They were scoreless going into the fourth quarter, and then you got 2 touchdowns late to try and make it a close game. But I really like Pittsburgh in this game. I think their offense is too good to have another game like they did last week. The Cowboys, you know what they're going to do. They're going to try and run the ball, control the ball, keep their defense on the side of the field. So if they cannot have success early, then that puts their defense, who's not good, but they haven't been really put into any pressure situations this year because the offense for Dallas is so good and they control the ball so much, they're always rested. So I think if Pittsburgh can get out to an early lead, maybe their first couple of possessions get some touchdowns, I think they'll win the game. I do expect them to win. I think it'll be a close game. Dallas is one of those teams that's never going to get blown out because of how they play. They're always competitive. Ezekiel Elliott needing 109 yards to be the first 1,000-yard rusher in the league this year. That's doable. You know what I mean? 110 yards is very doable. If he gets there or not, we'll have to wait and see. But I do like Pittsburgh. I think they'll do enough on offense. They can't play as bad as they did last week. Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Big Ben. I think they'll get the job done at home against Dallas, who will still be in a very good situation, still be the top seed in the NFC, even if they lose this week. But a win would definitely propel them forward. Another game that I think could be quite interesting is the Kansas City Chiefs going on the road to take on the Carolina Panthers at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is a tough game to predict in my eyes. Kansas City 6-2, they're playing absolutely fantastic. The way they play offense is just so simple, and then their defense so opportunistic, create so many turnovers. They've created 20 takeaways already this season. Carolina playing a lot better, but they're still not that team that they were last year when they were 15-1 and in the Super Bowl. I think Carolina has a good shot here. My only question with Kansas City is their running back situation. A lot of injured running backs. Spencer Ware's banged up. Jamal Charles is on IR. So I think if they can't run the ball, they're going to be in trouble. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm kind of torn on where to go here. I want to say Carolina just because they're at home. They're playing a lot better, but like I said, they're still not really dominating teams. Kansas City, a really solid defense. I think it'll go down to the wire, but I think Carolina maybe makes one more play than Kansas City does and will escape with the victory. And it's a really important victory. 3-5 is not the greatest record, but they're still right in the thick of it. Kansas City last year was 1-5, and they went on to win 10 in a row and finish 11-5 and win a playoff game. So I think I'll take Carolina at home for the simple fact that they are at home. I think that'll be really, really key into the victory. The last game I'll talk about here is the Seattle Seahawks going on the road to take on the New England Patriots. Seahawks at 5-2-1 after their win on Monday night. The Patriots at 7-1 coming off of a bye week. I never bet against Belichick, period, but coming off of a bye week especially, Belichick and Brady, I think they're going to get it done. New England, they're literally just like Alabama in college football. You can't bet against them. They're just the model of consistency the last 10, 15 years in the NFL. And I just can't bet against them. Seattle playing really, really good, 5-2-1, really solid there in the NFC. But I think they still have some question marks on offense. Their offensive line is kind of shaky. Christine Michael has not really been that running back they thought he would be when they started the year with Thomas Rawls injured. And Russell Wilson is still banged up. He's still dealing with a little bit of injuries. You give the Patriots 2 weeks to prepare for that. That just spells recipe for disaster for me. I absolutely love the Patriots this week. I think they will get it done, no problems whatsoever. As I said, my lock is going to be the Cardinals off of a bye week over San Francisco. I think that's absolutely a steal. I expect them to win that game. And then for me, Atlanta and Philly will be the last game I'll predict here. I really like the Falcons on the road. The Eagles are good, solid defense, but Carson Wentz has kind of come back down to earth, really. They started 3-0, but since then they're 1-4. They're just not playing well. Atlanta played on Thursday night last week, so they have a little bit of extra time to prepare, get Julio Jones with that ankle injury a little more healthy. Matt Ryan's playing absolutely fantastic. I'm not still sold on Atlanta going forward. Their defense is pretty bad, but they honestly have one of the best, most balanced offenses in the NFL, and I think that's what the difference is going to be in this game. Philly have been playing really good at home. They're 3-0, so I think they have to take that into consideration. But I'll take Atlanta in a close game in the Battle of the Birds. I think they'll just honestly get it done. I'm not really sold on Philly. I really wasn't even when they were 3-0. So I'll take Atlanta. For my upset of the week, I'm going to take the Vikings, who are 0-3 in their last 3 games on the road against Washington. Washington are a 2.5-point favorite at home. Minnesota, the problem is that their offensive line is just so terrible. They can't move the ball. They can't stay on the field. They have no running attack with Matt Asiata and Jerick McKinnon. So their defense, although it might be the best in the league, is constantly on the field, time in and time out, and they're just tired. They just can't withstand it for so long. But they're still were a 5-0 team at one point. They were the last undefeated team in this league. I'm going to take Minnesota on the road. I think they find a way to get it done. Couple of weeks now with a new system with Pat Shurmur at offensive coordinator. So I think I'll take Minnesota in a close game. I realize the Redskins are coming off of a bye week, which is something I do like. I do love teams off of bye weeks, but I'll take Minnesota in a close competitive game. I think they are finally due for a win, their first one in their last 4. So I will take them to win. The 4 teams on bye weeks this week are Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Oakland Raiders. Raiders have a game coming up in Mexico City next week, so that'll be pretty interesting. We'll talk about next Friday. But we'll take our first break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. After the break, talk a little bit about college football. Got some good games to preview this week, in particular Washington and USC. We will talk about that and more right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And thank you for returning back to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Going to be sticking with football, but we'll jump over to the college game, talking some college football. Last night we had a few matchups featuring teams that are ranked. So the number 15 Utah Utes overcome a 13-point first quarter deficit to defeat Arizona State 49-26. A really good running performance from Joe Williams, 15 carries, 181 yards, and 2 scores for the Utes as they improved to 8-2, now 5-2 in the Pac-12. Still battling to try and get into that Pac-12 championship game coming up next month. They're going to need some help. Colorado still sit atop that South region, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. A couple games left for both teams. We had the Battle of North Carolina. We had North Carolina and Duke. And while you would imagine this is a much better rivalry for basketball, which it is, the college football game not disappointing as well. So Duke actually pull off the upset over the number 17 ranked Tar Heels 28-27. They win there right at the end, just holding on, just escaping just barely. Duke. Picture this, okay? Think about this. North Carolina, number 17. The number 17 ranked team for the past 8 weeks has lost. I tell you what, next week, if I'm a team and I'm number 17, I'm scared. The last 8 weeks, the number 17 ranked team in the nation has lost. That just a bad number, you know what I mean? Just definitely not a good number. In addition to that game, there was one more. The Western Michigan Fighting Pride, they just keep on improving. They stay undefeated with a 37-21 victory over Kent State. The Broncos, like I said, stay undefeated at 10-0 now, playing fantastic. Currently ranked 21. They're obviously going to move up with their victory. have to see if they can push forward and keep having this undefeated season going on. The best of like I don't want to say the mid-majors, but the non-big conference schools still undefeated. Boise State do have a loss, so they're the lone unbeaten team from that sort of group there. So congrats to the Broncos of Western Michigan staying undefeated, like I said, with a 37-21 victory over Kent State. Tonight we have one matchup. It's Boston College. They're taking on number 18 Florida State. I'll take Florida State. I mean, Boston College sitting at 4-5. Although Florida State have not been the team we thought they were, 6-3, 3-3 in the ACC, they're still a much better team than Boston College, who absolutely got killed last week by Louisville. So have to see if the Seminoles can stay on top. I would imagine so. I think Dalvin Cook will have a great game. He's a very fantastic running back. He's definitely going in my eyes, in the first round next year of the NFL draft, a good 3-down back. All right, so now let's talk about some of these games here in the college football landscape. The big one is definitely number 20 USC going on the road to take on the number 4 Washington Huskies in Seattle, Washington. Like I said, one of the last few roadblocks left for Washington if they really want to get into this college football playoff. I've said it really all year long on the show. I think they have to go undefeated and win the Pac-12 championship if they want to get in. USC and Washington State before that Pac-12 championship game are like the remaining hurdles on their schedule. I don't think they'll really have much of an issue with Arizona State next week, but it definitely is a test here with USC, who sit at 6-3, playing fantastic, as I mentioned, since they turned to Sam Darnold. I'm going to take the Huskies. They're an 8.5-point favorite. I think the game's going to be closer than that. I really don't think USC is capable of losing by more than one possession. I think Washington wins maybe by 4 or 5. I think the difference is that they're at home, which I think is going to be obviously really, really important. 4:30 Pacific time, local start, 7:30 Eastern on Fox. So it's going to be a game that might start in daytime and then end in the night, obviously. Like I said, I'll take the Huskies. I think Jake Browning and John Ross at receiver can really carry Washington. They have a good running back, too, with Myles Gaskin, nearing 1,000 yards. He'll probably get that. He needs 48 in this game. So I'll take Washington. USC playing really fantastic. I think it'll be a close, competitive game. Washington, a solid defense, one of the best in the country, a balanced offense. Chris Peterson's Huskies, I'll take them. I'm still not really sold on Washington going forward. I think they're a better team than USC, but I think against some of these really elite college programs this year, like Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Ohio State, I think they would kind of struggle. I think they really haven't played anyone up to their talent yet. I think USC is probably going to be their toughest game. Washington, their other tough game being Utah a couple weeks back, which they won 24-17 with the punt return by Pettis there with 3 minutes left to win them the game. I think this USC game is going to be a lot tougher for them. I'd expect maybe a game somewhere in the 20s, maybe 28-24. I'll take Washington, though. I think that is going to be a win for them. And then they have to look at Arizona State and Washington State to try and end their season undefeated before they get into that conference title game. There's really not, like I said, not that much left on the college football schedule this week. An interesting game in my eyes might be number 9 Auburn against Georgia on the road between the Hedges and Athens. Auburn, a team that if they can top Alabama and stay undefeated rest of the season, they can really control their own destiny in a way. So if they struggle against Georgia, they have a loss there. That could be the one thing that throws them for a loop. Auburn is really, in my eyes, the one team that can maybe throw a monkey wrench in this top 4. If they somehow beat Alabama and win the SEC, it'd be really hard to keep them out of that consideration to get into the top 4, to get into the playoff. So that doesn't really happen if they don't win out, though. So definitely still some important games. If I have to pick an upset here, I'm going to take Minnesota on the road against Nebraska. Nebraska, number 19 at 7-2. Minnesota unranked, but the same record at 7-2, 4-2 in the Big Ten. A really solid running attack with Rodney Smith. He's got 954 yards and 13 touchdowns. Nebraska, I'm not really sold on. Last week we saw what happened to them, getting absolutely destroyed by Ohio State, 62-3. I think they're kind of riding that emotional downer. Lost a couple of games in a row now. They were undefeated. They were riding high. They got absolutely destroyed last week. I mean, they are returning home, which is definitely a good thing. But I think Minnesota might be that team to jump up and scare them a little bit because Nebraska, like I said, are just not in that good mindset right now. Lost a couple of games in a row, feeling kind of down. Realized their season is definitely over, so maybe they might have a stinker and maybe lose to the Golden Gophers. That's what I'm thinking. That's where my sort of mindset is with the pick. So that will be my upset. I'll take Minnesota on the road against Nebraska. Still a lot of important games. I mean, all these top teams are playing this week. They have important matchups they have to look at. Clemson are at home against Pittsburgh. Alabama are facing Mississippi State, Mississippi State coming off their upset of then at number 4 Texas A&M 35-28. So every team is still battling. Colorado is facing Arizona. I think that'll be an easy win for the Buffaloes. Michigan are against Iowa. That could be interesting. Iowa, a team really remind me of Nebraska from this year, whereas Iowa last year kind of got a benefit of the schedule, didn't have to play any of the big boys until late in the year. And now they sit at 5-4. They're kind of struggling this year, but they still have a good, solid team. They are at home. Michigan are solid, though. I'll take Michigan. Jim Harbaugh seems to always have his teams ready to play, so I really don't think that'll be an issue at all. Number 24, LSU, are on the road to take on number 25, Arkansas. I'll take the Tigers for LSU. They only lost 10-0 last week to Alabama. Their offense didn't score, but they only gave up 10 points to probably the best team in the country. I realize Alabama's offense is not nearly an elite talent offense, but still, it's Alabama. They're consistent all year long, ever since Nick Saban got there. So I'll take LSU over Arkansas. I think Ed Orgeron is trying to really still audition to become that LSU head coach. He realizes he's the interim coach now, but he's really trying to petition and audition to try to be that head coach going forward. I think he's done a really good job. He's got them at 5-3. They only lost one game, which was last week to Alabama, as I mentioned. The offense is still playing fantastic. Leonard Fournette and company still running the ball really well. So I'll take LSU on the road against Arkansas. I'll take them pretty convincingly, too. I think they'll win by double digits. I really like LSU. Ever since they switched over to Orgeron, their offense is playing fantastic. I think they'll get the job done against a good, solid Arkansas team. They sit at 6-3 and 2-3 in the SEC, but they're a tough out. Brett Bielema is a really underrated coach in my eyes. He seems to always have his teams ready to play. Good, solid plan of attack. Big offensive linemen. Pound the ball on the ground. They have a good setup there in Arkansas with Bielema going forward. So I think this will probably end the segment. Like I said, not much on the college football landscape this week, but still some important games, and the big one, as I mentioned, is Washington and USC. I'll take the Huskies, but we have seen crazy things. Every team is trying to put their best effort forward as they get down here a couple weeks left in the college football playoff rankings, trying to get into that top 4. So that being said, guys, we'll take our last break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. After the break, just talk some quick news. We have MLB Silver Sluggers. We have UFC 205 tomorrow. Dwayne Wade going back to Miami. It's going to be a good one. So we'll be right back, guys, right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
All right, guys, welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. The Chicago Bulls and Dwayne Wade end up topping the Miami Heat last night, 98-95. Dwayne Wade's first game as a visitor in Miami. He didn't do too bad. He didn't shoot well. He shot 5 of 17, but he had 13 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Played a big part in that victory for them. He said it was a very emotional night, and you would imagine returning back to a place that he called home for 13 years, maybe even the best athlete Miami has seen. I realize Dan Marino's there, but he didn't bring any championships to the city. Dwayne Wade was a part of 3 of them. So I guess you can maybe say Dwayne Wade might be the most influential sports figure that Miami has ever seen, which is really big with a city like that, with the history they have with the Dolphins. The Marlins have won championships. Dwayne Wade being that guy, I mean, I see it. I really do think he is. So It was, like I said, it was really an emotional night for him. But nevertheless, the Bulls do get the victory, 98-95. They improved to 5-4. The Heat now sitting at 2-5. They had a really solid game from Hassan Whiteside last night, 20 points and 20 rebounds to go along with 3 blocks. He led the way for the Heat. All right, so now we'll transition over talking about the Major League Baseball Silver Slugger Awards, basically like the best hitter at their respective positions. So we'll do the American League side first. So Salvador Perez gets the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger behind the plate for the Kansas City Royals. Miguel Cabrera, no real surprise there, the Silver Slugger first baseman for the Detroit Tigers. Jose Altuve, the Silver Slugger at second base. Think about Altuve here. He could sweep these awards. He won the Gold Glove. He won the Silver Slugger. In my eyes, I think he should win the AL MVP. He's one of the 3 finalists with Mookie Betts as well as Mike Trout, who are on this list as well and were Gold Glove winners as well. So one of these 3 guys in the American League is going to sweep these awards, which just really a fantastic year for one of them. I think it should be Altuve, and I really think it's going to be Altuve. But anyways, at shortstop is Xander Bogaerts of the Boston Red Sox. Third base, the reigning American League MVP, Josh Donaldson for the Blue Jays. In the outfield, we have Mark Trumbo of the Baltimore Orioles, Mike Trout and Mookie Betts, as I mentioned, Trout of the Angels and Betts of the Red Sox. And then the designated hitter, the farewell season for Big Papi, David Ortiz, the AL Silver Slugger at the DH position. So the Red Sox get 3 on here, the most of any team in this thing, so congrats to them. Although they did not have a good season as they would have hoped, losing in the ALDS to the Indians, still a really solid year, and they were the best offense all year long. So I'm not really surprised they have 3 Silver Sluggers. On the National League side, we have Wilson Ramos at catching for the Washington Nationals. Anthony Rizzo, fresh off of his World Series title and Gold Glove. He is your NL first base Silver Slugger. Anthony Rizzo of the Cubs, as I mentioned. At second base, Daniel Murphy of the Nationals, just 1 percentage point short of the NL batting crown from DJ LeMahieu of the Rockies. So Daniel Murphy of the Nationals gets the Silver Slugger at second base. The rookie Corey Seager for the Dodgers is your Silver Slugger for the shortstop position. I mean, this is an award that this kid could win for years to come. He's an absolute stud. He's an MVP finalist. I don't think he's going to get it. I think it'll be Chris Bryant, but he's definitely going to win the Rookie of the Year. At third base is Nolan Arenado of the Rockies. Another fantastic year. I realize he hits in Colorado, so he has a little bit of an advantage there, but he's an absolutely fantastic hitter and a good defensive player as well. Yoenis Cespedes is one of your outfielders from the Mets. The other 2 are Charlie Blackmon of the Rockies and Christian Yelich of the Miami Marlins. And then your Silver Slugger Award for pitcher is the Cubs' Jake Arrieta. Kind of surprised it didn't go to Madison Bumgarner, but still, I mean, both of these guys are good, solid hitting pitchers. So, I mean, I guess I can understand it. Arrieta did have a couple of home runs this year. Bumgarner usually does as well, but, I mean, he didn't really have as much success with the bat this year as he has the last couple of years. So, I guess I can see why it goes to Arrieta. And real quick, we'll end the show talking about UFC 205 tomorrow from Madison Square Garden in New York, the first UFC event to be held in New York since the state, kind of uplifted their ban on MMA. So it's New York. It's a big market. Not surprised. The UFC bringing in a ton of money. It's really, in my eyes, the fastest growing sport in the United States. It's just a moneymaker, and I'm not really surprised that New York is finally allowing MMA in their state. And there's no other place you want to have it in New York than at MSG, maybe the most historic building for sports ever. You know what I mean? Madison Square Garden has hosted pretty much everything there is, and now they're hosting their first UFC event. It's UFC 205. The headliner is definitely Eddie Alvarez and Conor McGregor, but we do have 3 championship fights on the card. As I mentioned, McGregor and Alvarez will battle for the unified lightweight title. Obviously, Conor McGregor, anytime he is fighting, it's going to draw a lot of attention, even pre-fight, for all of his antics and everything he talks about, how just kind of outspoken he is, really just, in my eyes, selling tickets. But this is a great card. Not even the championship fights. You have Chris Weidman against Yoel Romero. Weidman, a former middleweight champion. You have Cowboy Donald Cerrone against Kevin Gastelum. You have Miesha Tate against Raquel Pennington over there. That's a great card. But let's talk about some of these championship fights now. So McGregor against Alvarez, really a solid matchup. I say a fair matchup. I do expect McGregor to win. He's just one of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound. I really can't bet against him. As much as I don't really like the guy, I think he kind of is a little too outspoken. He says more than he probably should. I think he's going to win the fight. I mean, he's still a solid fighter. You have to respect him for that game. You have Tyrone Woodley against Stephen Thompson in the welterweight division. Woodley at 16-3 against Stephen Thompson at 13-1. Stephen Thompson does have the reach advantage a little bit, so I think that maybe gives him a little bit of an edge against Woodley. It's going to be a standing fight in my eyes. I don't think these guys are going to go to the ground that much. I think it'll be kind of a boxing event in a little bit. I think both guys are really capable of winning. I guess I'll take Woodley. Stephen Thompson is really fighting well recently. At 13-1's his record, of course. But I'll take Woodley. I think he's just a little bit of a stronger guy, a little bigger in size. Although the reach is not there, I think he'll probably win the fight. And then the last one here is in the strawweight division for the women. It's two fighters from Poland that are both undefeated. And I know I'm a soccer guy, so I know some of these names, but I know I'm going to butcher these. So we have Joanna Jedrzejczyk against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So, I'm sorry, I know I butchered both of those. But, I mean, two undefeated fighters, both from Poland. So, Joanna at 12-0 against Karolina at 10-0. I mean, I guess that's good. You don't really see too many fighters out of Poland now much anymore. So, I guess that's good for the country and for women's MMA. Both of them undefeated, so we're going to see one of these two women actually lose their first fight. So, Joanna Krejcik is the champion. So we'll have to see how she can do. Like I said, both. This is really just an identical fight. The reach is the same, the weight, the height. Joanna Krejcik has a 3-inch height advantage, so maybe that'll go to her favor a little bit. But they both want to land punches. They both want to strike from the standing position. So I think we're going to see a good, solid boxing match from these two ladies. Have to see if one of them can connect and maybe drop the other and maybe win the fight. But anyways, it's still a really historic event. UFC 205, the first MMA event in New York. Anytime Conor McGregor's fighting, it's definitely must-see TV. So we'll have to see how that will go. And we will obviously update you on Monday with results from UFC 205. But if you want a more in-depth look at this card and really MMA in general, you can look at the Golden State Media Concepts MMA podcast. Mr. Tate does a fantastic job reviewing and breaking down, building up all of these events in UFC and Bellator and Invicta and just mixed martial arts in general. He loves it, and he does a really good job on the show. So if you want a more in-depth look at MMA and UFC 205, turn to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA podcast. He will obviously give you much more insight than I will because, well, that's what they do on the show. We just cover it kind of broadly, but he goes much more in depth. So with that being said, guys, I feel like we had a really fantastic show here on a Friday. Unfortunately, Anthony was not able to be in here, just kind of feeling under the weather today, and then Alex is never here on Fridays. So you just had to roll with me. Unfortunately, if you do not like me, then I'm sorry. But if you do, well, then, hey, you got more out of me. So, like I said, a great show. I feel like we did a really good job. I feel like we touched on a lot of great stuff. NFL, MMA, basketball, MLB, college football. I mean, it was a good show. So we will be back on Monday to break down everything that happened this weekend in the wide world of sports, talking UFC, football, basketball, baseball, just anything that really comes up, any big, important stories to talk about. That's what we do here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. So my name is Ben, signing off for Anthony and Alex. We will see you guys on Monday. Once again, happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you again for all your service over the years and the service you are still currently providing. I know I speak on behalf of everyone here at the Golden State Media Concepts that we appreciate your service and gratitude, and just thank you for fighting for all the freedoms that we have been given throughout the years. You are the reason that America is one of the greatest countries on the planet, and in my eyes, definitely the greatest country on the planet. So thank you so much for your service, guys. We will be back on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend, and see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Podcast. Part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.